for me, a marriage is an agreement. It's a partnership. It's where you agree to be loyal and trusting and a safe place. And there are conditions.
I have some questions for you. Hey, brave girl, how you do the things that you do?
Welcome to the Brave Talk Show. Brave women, bold topics, nothing is off the table. In today's episode, we are talking all things divorce, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It is a powerful episode, so if you like it as much as we think you will, smash that subscribe button so you can connect with us on future episodes as well. But first, we're going to do one of our favorite segments. Our favorite is the whole show, right? But we love this hot topic. And today, our hot topic is feminine products. Do you hide them? Are you ashamed of them? Do you flaunt them? Do other people know when you're on your period? I'm just rattling out the mouth. Let's hear it. Marcella, do you?
So I don't have a period anymore, but my whole growing up, I grew up with, obviously, my mom was in the house. I have 3 sisters, and still no one talked about it. It was hidden. It was like,
even though you were probably all on it at the same time.
Yep,
Cycle
but it
syncing.
was, as I remember it, it was not talked about. Yeah.
I definitely want to ask about your period now because you look too young to not have your period. There's got to be a story there.
I had a hysterectomy.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay, hysterectomy. Well, unfortunately, I still have it. I do hide them, not because I want to. I hide them because my husband is completely disgusted by my period. And when we first got married, I was just like, no big deal. Like, it's not like I just throw some bloody pad in the trash can for an open face for everyone to see. Like, I would, wrap it in toilet paper and throw it in. But like, if he even saw that, like, he'd be like, he was just so grossed out. And then, okay, like, I have a dog now. And like, then the dog started getting into the trash can. And then it's like, then we'd find everything like ripped apart underneath the bed or wherever he would hide it. And then that's when I started feeling like disgusted. And so then what I started doing was we had like a cupboard behind our toilet. So then what I started doing was then like putting it in there, and then at the end of the day, like just getting them all and then them throwing them away. And then my husband was so sweet. I'm telling you, this is so relevant. Like a month ago, my husband's like, I got you a trash can with a lid. Duh. 12 years of being married, and how come I never thought about just getting a trash can with a lid? Like, that just solves the problem. No one gets to see anything. The dog can't get in it because it's got like, I'm not talking like a light lid, it's like a heavy metal lid. So now we have this cute little small trash can in the bathroom. It's got a heavy lid. All my problems are over. So took 12 years to figure that one out.
Well, hey, I am aligned with you on everything except for I didn't figure out the trash can yet. So I need to go home and order it on Amazon because it's the same way. Like, my husband is so disgusted by periods and any feminine talk. He's just disgusted by any bodily things. Like me giving birth any day now, like he's like getting anxiety about it already just because he knows bodily fluids come with a baby, and he's just like, he's so grossed out. And so I like super hide my tampons or my discs or cups or whatever I use.
Anything that you use.
Yeah, like wrap them up in toilet paper, shove them, like make sure stuff's on top of it. And then we got a dog, same thing. Dog started, and then my husband was just like,
oh, and then,
we're going to get rid of the dog because she brings out tampons that chews them up and I can't handle it. And I'm like, we're not getting rid of the dog. We'll just figure it out, and now you solved our problem. Yep. We're just going to get a heavy garbage can.
But why do you think literally half of the human population has a period every 28 days? Why is it our responsibility to make sure that the other half of the population is comfortable? And I say this as a person that's still uncomfortable talking about it, and it's been happening to me. I get anxious for my child to have her period because I'm like, oh no, she has to go into secret land of shame.
Yeah.
Like that, I feel that.
Yeah. No,
how do we break that?
I get it, because I grew up in a house that wasn't like that. I had my sister, my mom, and me, and my brother my brother didn't complain until later on, but I remember we would all have our period around the same time, and my brother was in charge of taking out the trash. And I didn't think anything of it. He never once said, I don't want to take out the trash because of you guys. Like, but one day when he was like 17, he was like 17 or 18, and he was like, I remember when you and Mom and Barb were all on your period, and I'm the one that had to take out the trash. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. But he never once said anything there. So I grew up like, it was just like, just throw it in the trash can, no big deal. You know, and I didn't hear from him until later. So yeah, I went into my marriage kind of like, what's the big deal? And I had to learn from him like that he was really grossed out by it. But I didn't, I was like, well, I don't really know how to solve it. Like I'll wrap it, I'll do what I can. But like, part of me was like, you're gonna have to deal with it.
My husband is opposite. He's more comfortable talking about it than I am.
Really?
And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know. It's super weird.
Yeah, I don't think my husband would like ever buy tampons for me at the store.
My husband's like, let me go get you some.
No.
Or
I don't think he would.
Whatever.
I think
I don't
my husband would if I asked him to. Like, hey, can you pick up some tampons for me? I think he would. But I don't know. I need to unpack a lot too because my daughter just started her period. And it was like this wonderful thing for us. And I was like, we're not going to do any shame around it. It's totally normal. Like, and it was a great connecting thing for us. Like, welcome to womanhood. Let's go celebrate. Let's go get your favorite smoothie and let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And like, welcome. And let's talk about what it means for your body. And like, I'm not ashamed of it in any way, like talking to other women about it or even around a man. Like we have a male producer. Hi, Gainer. And we're like, I'm not ashamed of it at all. Like it's a natural body thing. That's the way God made my body to do it every month. But for some reason, I feel like I have to make my husband comfortable. And when he's uncomfortable, I'm like, what do I need to do? What do I need to hide? What do I need to, like, my goal, like, obviously I haven't had a period in 9 months, but before was like to go on my period and my husband not know it. Like not even know that I was on my period.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. Why does that matter to me? So I have some unpacking
But
to
at
do.
the same time, okay, like I think for me, part of my reasoning is like, I'm not gonna like, I'm gonna pick and choose my fights, you know? And honestly, like hiding my pads in underneath some extra thing, like that's not a fight I'm willing to like, that's not a hill I'm willing to die on. Like, you don't like it, fine, you know? I have to work on my own mindset and reminding myself it's nothing to be ashamed of, you know, that kind of a thing. I would say it's irritating. It's irritating that he doesn't like it, but not enough for me to like, let's go down, I'm leaving my pads out and you're gonna deal with it. Kind of a fight.
Here's my thing with it. Like I'm willing to hide my tampons and like be considerate and not leave them out on the counter or something, you know? But like him being grossed out about it, that does hurt my feelings because it makes me feel almost less than.
Yeah.
Like I let it affect me because I'm like, it's just like I can't control it.
You think I asked for this?
I know. You think I want to bleed every month for 7 days?
Yeah.
No. You think I like sticking a tampon up? No. I'm sorry if it bothers you. I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable. Let me bleed out of my body because I want to make you like. There's just there's
you make
this
a
line.
good point there.
My company, we're doing a collaboration this coming week with the Period Project. Awesome. And it has just really got me thinking about, like, I had to take a photo shoot with tampons and pads and, like, you know, scrunchies. And it got me thinking, like, why am I not comfortable with this thing that, like, affects every single woman and my own daughters and my own sisters?
Yeah.
I'm like, why are we, I haven't come to a conclusion or even like a good peaceful space with it. It's something I'm kind of in the middle of, which is funny because I don't even have a period anymore. But I think, you know, I have a 7-year-old. She's coming up, right? And I want to have that unpacked before she gets there so that I understand that, like, how do we make this something that is comfortable and you're proud and you don't have to go to school feeling shame? And what do you do when your friends start it? Like, how do you help them become comfortable with it? I think I've had too many experiences where I had to, like, wrap the thing around my waist. You know what I mean?
Day
and
2
you're
is
like
a 2-pants
calling your mom to, like, come get you. And, like, I've had too many of those experiences that I think there was just a lot of embarrassment and shame around it. And I'm trying to figure out, I love the Period Project because their goal is to put feminine products in all of the schools and in workplaces, which I think that slightly takes away that gives you acceptance, right? If you walk into a bathroom and there's this beautiful tray of, like, all the things, that's the whole school is
it's
accepting.
Like, let me take care of you.
It's accepting, like, we acknowledge that this is a thing that you deal with and we are yes, like,
Yeah.
let
Which
us help
the irony
you.
is this. It's like one of the things that connects us as the female human race.
Yeah. We'll
Skin
even have
color,
periods together
it
if we're
does-
hanging out with each other.
Yeah,
Have you read
like,
the red?
there's-
Have you read the red tent?
No.
The red tent is this entire thing about how they used to have red tents, and it was called the red tent.
And the women would
And the
gather
women would
together during
gather
their period.
every week or every month during their week, and we would gather. It is exactly the thing that connects us.
Yep.
We should talk about it
Interesting.
more.
Yep. That's good.
So we should hang out every 28 days.
Yeah.
The world
Except
should
for mine's
shut
not every
down.
28 days, and you don't have one anymore.
I'll come hang out.
What's your days?
Mine's always different.
Okay.
I've never been able to be like, oh,
Yeah,
day's
I have to say for
32.
me, mine's definitely like a range for sure. Interesting.
You should do a whole episode on cycles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and how you can sync your cycle with your exercise and with your food.
With the
and
moon and every.
so
Oh, so good.
much. So much. Okay, so you might have noticed we have a special guest today. This is Marcella. She is co-hosting with us today. We had some crazy morning going on where Vanessa and Robin couldn't make it this morning. We've never had that in a year of filming.
Nope.
And so Marcella jumped in, and she was so wonderful to be here with us. This is our 3rd episode that we're filming with her, and we're so grateful that she's here. So she's going to share some of her expertise today. Our subject, we're going to jump right in, is divorce. And Marcella, you've had a divorce.
Yes.
So you have a divorce, you have a blended family, you've been married for 7 years? 11 years, and you have a child with your current husband,
Yes,
right?
we
So
have
you've done it all, like check the boxes.
His, mine, ours.
Yes.
Yes. We have all of that.
So today we wanted to talk about divorce because divorce is really common, right? You are you had 2 divorces in your family when you were growing up as a child.
Yep.
I don't have any experience with divorce. I have some opinions on divorce, but I don't have any experience with it. And then you have had experience.
Yeah. And then I didn't have a divorce with my ex, but the experience was similar. I was not married. I lived with my boyfriend of like 6 years. We had a child together, and we ended up separating and going our separate ways. He's now married. I'm married. But we have a kid together
You co-parent,
we could
yeah.
co-parent and a 6-year relationship. Like I think without like the rules of like paper and owning of property and some of that stuff, there was still very much a marriage-like experience that was there that we we went through before our separation. So
here, let's start with this. What circumstances would you get a divorce? Marcella?
Well,
you start.
now
Yeah,
I feel like that
obviously you had one,
question
so.
is a little bit skewed for me because if you would have asked me that way before during my first marriage, I would have probably said, "Oh, we'll survive anything." I think I probably would have said if he hit me, like that. That's like a heck
The line
no,
you didn't
right?
cross.
Because that, for me, that involves like the safety of my children.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I'm like, that just seems like way far beyond my capacity to like work through.
Yeah.
That is a no tolerance for me.
But you would have said you would have survived an affair.
I don't know. I think I would have. I'm trying to remember back to the person that that girl was. I think that I thought that I was like, oh, if he had an affair, I'm out. Like I think that I thought that way. But when it all went down, I was like, ride or die. Like I am here. I will stay. Like whatever. Like
You wanted to make it work.
I wanted to be the girl that was like lived to tell the story. I wanted to be the fairy tale that like made it through the storm. Like, look what we did. I was like, I am capable of forgiveness and work, and I can do hard things, and I am that kind of person that can like weather through this. And in the end, I am that person. I am the person that can do that. But when another person is like, no, you have nothing, like there's not an option. There's nothing to work with. And that's where I was at.
Yeah.
I was like, let's do it. This is going to be, let's get in there. And he was like, nah. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I think for me, probably what you're saying here, like what happened with you towards the end. I'd like to believe that I could handle anything. I think that if my husband were to have an affair, but he was repentant and he really was genuinely sorry, and he showed that he was sorry, then I would be willing to work through it. If he did that and then he had another affair and then it was like, oh, I'm so sorry, babe, and and then there was signs like that you're saying you're sorry but you're not, then that would be a different story, right? But I think like there would be I'd give him a shot if he showed that he was sorry from the first time. I would like let's work it out. But I would want to unpack that. Like I know that there's this art of I'm responsible for me and you're responsible for you, but I do believe that divorce is a slow fade. And there's things that can happen early on that create domino effects later on. And so I would want to, if my husband in that situation, he was repentant and he was done, I would want to, like, let's go to counseling and unpack, like, why did this affair happen in the first place? What's going on with you? What's going on with me? What's going on between both of us that led to this place where you felt like you needed to go to another woman to, and we'd have to dig into it and you have to be honest. And I don't know all that would be found because obviously this is a hypothetical situation, but that's what I would want to go through.
And that takes two people.
But it does take two
right?
people.
Like one person can be like, yeah, let's do all this. Like
right.
this is
but
how
if they
we
don't
get
show
there.
up to counseling and they don't want to share and they're not willing to get vulnerable and really unpack what was going on and what happened, totally different story, right?
While we were going through all of the like trauma, finding out and then apologizing and then finding out more and then more apologizing and saying we're not doing that anymore and then me finding out that we were, there was this small window that all the apologies were made and we started to work on it. And I was like, this is how this gets fixed. And like I said, small window.
Yeah, and you thought everything was good and you were like,
and
yeah.
And I think that it had we kept on that willingness to work, but it didn't go that way, right?
Yeah.
Like it just, not everyone participated in that work and then fell back into habits. So I did see like that window where it could be possible. And people survive worse than what I've been through.
Oh, yeah.
And even in my current marriage, the first year of our marriage, there was like some pretty hellish stuff that happened that, it's private for us, but it's things that I would say like in my level of worseness, like it was up there in the like walk away situation.
Yeah.
And yet he was willing to work. I was willing to work. Yep. We came to the table, said, what's going on here? How do we work through this? What's going on? And we unpacked it and we worked through it. And we're still working through things.
Right.
But there's a huge difference between people that are willing to work and not.
Yep, agreed. And I think my husband and I had a similar experience. Our first year was really hard. And I remember us getting into we were like fighting every single day. And we were married, like it was about the 6-month mark. And it was right before, I remember the time because I actually had a miscarriage during like the darkest part where we were like, do we even want to be married? You know what I mean? And I actually remember thanking God for the miscarriage because I was like, I can't raise a kid in a marriage like this, like something needs to change. But I remember like the millionth fight that we had gotten into. And I remember us being in the room and we were taught by very well-intentioned people that you never go to bed angry. And so we're like, all right,
we're going to squash that.
Oh my gosh, please, I want to end
Just
that
don't
now.
do that ever.
Don't. Like, go to bed.
Bed.
You will wake up feeling refreshed and you can like emotionally like be able to handle the situation better. But so we were like fighting it out till like, sunrise kind of stuff. And I remember at one point, like he was on one side of the bed and I was on one side of the bed. And we had been fighting and we were so tired from the actual fighting that we were like panting and like didn't even have anything else to say. And I remember I'm looking at him and he's looking at me and there was like silence. Like we were just looking at each other and I'm like, what are we gonna do? I said that to him, like, what are we gonna do?
We're still mad. We can't go to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, the problem's not solved. We're livid at each other, but there was not, And he looked defeated, I looked defeated, and at that point we're like, okay, like we need help because we didn't want a divorce. We come, from a evangelical background where, the two big reasons for divorce are, abuse and cheating, and that wasn't necessarily happening. And so we went to our church, and we're like, hey, hate each other. We want a divorce, but we don't want to. Like, can you help us? And so they lined us up with this other couple from our church who had been married 15 years, and they were happy, and they were doing
a
marriage
mentor thing.
Yeah, and so we sat down with them, and then we went to some these conferences called Love and Respect conferences, and just read some books, did some things, and it was huge for us. Now, am I going to say that we went into an amazing, perfect marriage after that? No, but we got the tools. And we were able to start using them, and we were able to start getting out of these fights and actually pouring into our marriage and making a difference. And both of us were involved in that process, and it was huge. And I'm so thankful for it because I don't know how we would, I think that we would have ended up divorced and ashamed and what did I do to mess things up? When we went through the counseling and the coaching and so forth, it's oh, okay, that's what I'm doing to contribute to this problem. And because you can't always fix the other person, right? So you have to really look at what am I doing, even if you think that 90% of the problem is them, you still got to own your 10%,
Yeah.
And that's what we just each did. And that was really, really important, I think, in that whole healing process.
I think that's what's hard about a marriage is that as independent as I am, a marriage is a partnership.
Yeah.
And my husband and I just had a therapy session. We just go to therapy, even when things aren't bad, we just go. And
I think it's good.
It's hard because sometimes you're we're good, we'll just wait
Skip this
to
week.
pay for this when it's bad, what do we need to
not
go
cheap.
for? Yeah. But I just think it's just so interesting I forgot my train of thought, but it's so interesting to sit and really honestly work through pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, this came up. I was I don't want to need you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to need you. I want to just be fine doing my life as I am. But I signed up for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be if you have a business partner and you're I don't, you do just your thing over there. You can't run a business like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to come to the conclusion, I have to get okay with needing you, and I have to understand which parts am okay to need you for,
Yep.
and which parts I'm okay to be me, and to be okay with that. And I'm still working through that,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot in a marriage. So
Yep.
I want to ask you guys, because this came up with my sister, do you think marriage is an unconditional love?
Define unconditional love.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? I mean, what is unconditional love?
To you. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So I'll just fill this in a little bit.
I have a thought too, but I wanted to let you.
We
get
were
out, yeah.
unpacking this with I feel like we keep saying unpacking, but it's just
There's things to
best
unpack.
thing to say,
Yeah.
right? I feel like there's an unconditional love for children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing they do, would break the love that a mother would have for them. Nothing.
Yeah.
You would just love them.
Yeah.
Whether they abused you, whether they went to jail, I don't know, you would still love them.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you couldn't technically have them in your home, you would still love them.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, a marriage is an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
It's a partnership. It's where you agree to be loyal and trusting and a safe place. And there are conditions. And I know that because I loved my first husband. Mm-hmm. And he broke, I shouldn't just say it's him, there's a partnership there. Our contract broke. Mm-hmm. And I have no love for that man anymore.
So I think for me, the difference is what kind of love. There's love that you might have for your child. There's love that you might have for a friend. And there's some of that you're going to still have in the same way for your spouse. But then there's also in love, right? And I think that in any marriage, you're going to have ups and downs of when you feel in love with your spouse and when you just love them. You love them because they're ideally maybe your best friend, hopefully, your lifelong partner, the father of your children, right? But maybe you don't necessarily like them right now, or they're not giving you the thrills right now, and you're just kind of going through that lull. And then when you catch yourself in those places, ideally, it's good to do things in your marriage to bring that love back up. But I think even any marriage, I think that if people were honest, they would say that there were ups and downs with whether or not they felt in love. I think a lot of people divorce because they don't feel in love anymore with their spouse. But to me, if you were in love with them before and they're not abusing you, they're not they're not belittling you as a person where you're dying inside then there's a way for you to bring that in love feeling back. It does take work, but you can totally do that. And I think that's worth fighting for. What the difference is when that person is no longer even loving you as a human being, like not respecting you as a person, breaking trust with you, abusing you, those types of things. That's when I can see how, okay, that's something that's a little bit harder. And I think obviously every couple has to kind of decide where they draw the line on with that. But I wouldn't call it the same thing. I think that's two different problems, you know? Something to think about.
Yeah. I think that, I was brought up, with my mom and with my community and my religion. I feel like I was brought up to have an unconditional love.
Now, unconditional in love or unconditional just love as like...
I think that in love for me it's very different. Like unconditional love for me meant like, I will love you no matter what, right? Like I will be here. I guess maybe that is what I'm meaning. Like I will be here. I will stay committed. I will stay.
Yeah.
We'll work it out. Like unconditional, meaning like I won't leave because I don't like how you eat noodles. I won't, I will still be okay with you. If you get a girlfriend, we're going to figure this out. Like I'm here unconditionally.
Yeah.
And I just, that obviously like that belief system broke for me.
Well, because it can make it, especially in some circumstances, it can leave you susceptible to abuse.
Yeah.
And I think that's, to me, like if your spouse severely broke trust with you, whether it was an affair or physical abuse or really bad, verbal abuse that just broke your spirit over and over, and they didn't seem sorry and they weren't changing, and you're seeing it affect your kids, all of that kind of stuff, like, to me, you can still love them without being in a marriage with them. Like you can, my husband and I have talked about like even the art of like separation for reconciliation in some cases could be possible, where we've seen people where sometimes you have to like step away for a while and like do counseling on yourself and then be willing to come back and try that again for the sake of what you're trying to do, right? But like you're still loving each other, but like there's also boundaries that you have to have. That doesn't mean that you don't love them, but there's rules of engagement of how you treat one another,
Yeah.
that really, if crossed, like I think it's worth talking about in deciding what you want to do.
So when my husband and I were engaged, we had a couple discussions where he was like, hey, I don't ever want us to even consider divorce.
Yeah.
Like divorce isn't an option, is what he would always say.
Yeah.
And that came from his level of commitment, where he's like, hey, I am fully committing myself to you. I'm never going to go after another woman because I'm just not interested in you anymore. I'm never just going to be like, I'm bored with you, so let's call it quits. You're not fun for me anymore. He's like, my level of commitment is the top, where I'm never going to consider divorce. It's not even an option.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, okay, I don't know how that sits with me. And it's taken me years to process that. And what it's come down to is I have that same level of commitment.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, we have a family member that was getting married. He was engaged, and he was like, yeah, if she ever finds somebody more attractive than me, there's the door. If I ever find somebody
To
more
me, I'm like,
attractive
what?
than her, then I'm going to go after that girl that I find more attractive. And I remember being like, that blows my mind because
Yeah.
there's no, why would you even get married? There's no commitment there. If she's just who you're interested in for right now, then why get married?
Yeah.
And so that's when like some puzzle pieces started coming in for me where I'm like, okay, my commitment is top notch.
Yeah.
Divorce isn't an option for me as far as interests go and as far like I am fully committed to this marriage. I'm going to make it work. But are there walkaway points? Absolutely. And did I have to tell my husband, hey, look, I know that divorce, you don't want it to be an option, but it kind of is for me. Because if you were to beat me, that would be my walkaway point. And I used to think if my husband had an affair, that would be my walkaway point. I'd be like, I don't think I personally could heal from that. I don't think I could forgive. And it would be less to do with him and more to do with me. I wasn't in a mental space where I could ever, I'm such a jealous person, that I was like, I don't think I could ever recover from it and be in a committed, loving relationship with you, having known that you had an affair. But in the, the last 6-7 years where I've really come a long way mentally, I'm at a point in my relationship where I'm like, I love Benton so much that that's no longer a walking away point for me, where it's not a easy fix. It's not just a close point. You have an affair, I leave. It's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's now, okay, well, let's talk. You did that. Let's, like, are you repentant? Are you like, do you still want to make this work? Whereas before it was so cut and dry for me.
Right. It's like, even if you were sorry, I'm out.
Yeah, I was just like, I can't handle it. Where now I'm like, I don't know if I could handle it. I'd like to think that I could handle it. And it's not cut and dry for me anymore. Whereas the abuse, that is cut and dry for me still. Like, I'm like, you hit me, you push me, you abuse me, then that's my walk-away point.
I think it's interesting because I think we would all agree on the abuse thing. And I think that I've never been in that situation, and I don't personally know anybody in that situation. But having watched the situation I was in where I got lied to, and it was the slowest drip. Like, now I can see it, but it was the slowest drip to where, like, I didn't see it until it was, like, splashing in a sense, right? But lots of people ask me, like, how did you not see it? It was my friend. It was like, it was in our neighborhood. Like, how did you not see it? It was in your church. Like, how did you not see it? And so sometimes I think, like, I would like to think that I would walk away, but I hesitate even saying that because I don't want to inadvertently judge people that have found themselves in a slow drip of being abused. Because, like, he lost his temper. He's never done that before. He was, he lost his job. He lost his temper. He's high stress. I did this stupid thing. Like, I can see how you get there, if that makes sense.
No,
right?
I can see it too. I was thinking about that as well. I was like, my husband's never laid a hand on me. Never, 12 years. But if we got into a really, really horrible fight and I'm just like cussing him out, maybe I slap him or something like that, and he like out of character like pushed me up against a wall or something like that, like, don't get me wrong, that would be very upsetting, but I'd give him that one. I would give him that one if he was really sorry. If that started to become like, okay, this is becoming a common thing, or it was a straight up punch to the face, like, you know what I mean, where it's like there's a little bit of it, you can kind of pick up on like the differences. I think that's when I would have to like, I'd have to decide then and there on which one. But I think there'd be even a little bit of room where I can see how somebody might put up with something if it was completely out of character and it wasn't.
Yeah, what if he was like, I'll go to anger management. I can't believe I did that. I'm so sorry.
I'm going to tell our pastor, or I'm going to tell our bishop or something like that. I'm going to make it public so that I can be held accountable. Like, that's some pretty good stuff that I'd be willing to at least give at least once on.
And I think you have to, and that's when you have to get really strong in who you are and give yourself a lot of love so that you can walk away when you know you should. You know,
Yeah.
I am in a marriage. We've been married for 11 years, and divorce was always on the table. We literally got married being like, if it doesn't work out, like, we did it before, like, let's just get married so I can get out of my parents' basement, like, meet you at the courthouse on a Wednesday, like, high five, like, cool. Like, literally, like, that was the deal. And we joke about it now because I don't know that he realized, like, how I was just like, whatever, like, get me out of my parents' basement, like, this sounds fine, you know? But that's the circumstances we got married in. And so anytime anything was like, I was like, packing my bags, like, I'm out. And interestingly enough, every single time we worked through it. And every time we chose to stay. Every day we chose to stay or not. And here we are 11 years, and I have found this great love and appreciation that we both know that being together, we have chosen that. That there is no overlaying, like, must stay. There's
Right.
no guilt in staying or leaving.
Or
Like,
not staying, right? An
yeah,
either
like,
or.
we just choose this every day. And even through the crappy stuff, we chose. And there is this weird, like, confidence and peace in our relationship where it's like, well, we stuck that out. Guess we're going to stick out the next thing. Like,
Yeah.
we work through crap. And that feels better on me than it did in the past. But anyway, I don't know how I got there from
Right.
the
But I think even talking about these nuances, like even okay, like even let's talk about past physical abuse. What about really bad emotional abuse?
Yeah.
You know, psychological abuse. There's
Yeah.
some stuff that's like
Manipulation.
hardcore abuse that was where someone never left a hand on that person, but they were destroying that person's spirit over and over and over again, and there was no, you know, change and those types of things. I've seen that happen in I've had some of my friends. One of my friends, you know, I've seen so much, and I over and over, I'm like, girl, you need to, like, leave, and she won't. She was like, I won't, because if I leave, I'm afraid he'll kill himself. And that's why she stays. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to watch, like, how wrapped up they've gotten in that emotional stuff. But I mean, and you know, she's same, you know, evangelical background as me, but to me, I'm like, this is still abuse. It's not physical, but it's still abuse, you know? And I think a lot of people, dismiss it as if, oh, well, it's not physical, therefore it's not a big deal or as big of a deal. I'm like, I disagree. I think that there's some people that are quick to say emotional abuse when it's like your husband's just being a jerk. And let's be honest, like, all men can be jerks at times, right? Like, but you can still work through it. And there's things that you can do to also, like, see, like, where am I also provoking things as well? Like, I was disrespectful, and so they were unloving. Like, that's just the natural response. Like, where's your role in it? But when you've done all the things and you're not being disrespectful, this is completely on them, then I think that's a different story.
Well, this is what's interesting, is that I was very careful about what kind of person I was in my first marriage, and that didn't go so good. I'm not careful.
Now, if you want to be
do
disrespectful,
not
you'll be disrespectful.
walk on eggs. Like, I can be a hot mess, jerk face, like, and I know when I am. And
But do you
he
apologize
still
when you do
loves
it?
me.
Like, when you realize
That's
that
the
you did,
difference.
like, that you messed up, do you say that you're sorry?
But I mean, he doesn't need me to. He's still there.
Right.
And I think that's the thing. We think that if we do it right, if we show up the right way, then we earn this love. Then they'll be kind. That's
not the
true.
case.
You can be a jerk. You can be kind of a crappy version of yourself and still be loved.
Yes.
And I think that is the facade that I had told myself, that if I had done all these things right, my husband would come home happy and he would appreciate me. And now if my husband comes home unhappy, I'm like, oh, what happened in your day? Like, has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Even if I had a crappy day, even if I, like, didn't make dinner, like, I'm not, even if he's actually mad that I didn't make dinner, I still am like, well, then you should make dinner. And, like, I didn't feel like making dinner. Like, you can be mad about it or not. Like, you're an adult.
Right.
So here's another question with divorce. Divorce rates are up in all of America, right? All over the world. More people get divorced than ever before. Do you think that I think that there used to be a stigma around divorced people, whether that's in your community or just judgmental, like, oh, you couldn't make it work, or oh, that's sad, your poor kids, they're suffering because you couldn't make it work. I feel like my parents' generation, that was much more the case because there was so much judgment around divorce. People were willing to stick out really terrible things because they wanted to avoid the judgment. Do you feel like that's still the case today?
I have a completely different experience. And maybe it's because of your faith background, I don't know. But like my family on both sides, all my aunts and uncles on both sides, except for like 2, have all been divorced. Which is really strange because my grandparents on both sides, the parents of my aunts and uncles who all got divorced, they stayed together. They had happy marriages. Yeah, they had ups and downs, but they made it through, and they were great examples. Right. Yet my parents' generation, I think that divorce was kind of this new thing. I think it was taught with this like belief of like, oh, it'd be free, you could just get a divorce, no problem. And I don't think we had enough of an example of what it can do to your kids in society for us to learn lessons from. So I think that they were all divorcing, thinking like, okay, that'll solve all your problems. But when you do decide to have a divorce, it will solve some problems, but there are going to be other problems that you're going to have because of it, whether it's financial or the effects on your kids. And you have to like really look honestly at that situation and decide, is this divorce worth it? Or is it better to just fight it, to work it out and really work hard on this marriage because the other effects are not worth it, right? With my family and our family's story, I mean, it left all me and my cousins, I mean, just like broken kids with single family households going back and forth or not seeing families. Addiction started to happen. I mean, it was a big mess. And so I went into my marriage like going, I do not want to ever get a divorce because I saw how it affected me. I mean, I'm 42 years old and I have issues to this day that are the effect of my parents' divorce. Now, did my parents divorce for the reasons we're talking about now? Not my mom and my dad's first marriage. Now, I'm not making any judgment on them because they didn't know better. They didn't. This was a new thing, you know. My dad was not getting, not working, and he was not getting the jobs that my mom wanted. My mom was like having to go and work, and she was frustrated. And little things like that. But there was no affairs, there was no abuse. My dad was a gentle man. He was not a physical abuser, anything like that. All the things that I think that if I were in those circumstances, knowing what I know today, that I would have worked it out. But my mom didn't know better. My dad didn't know better. And unfortunately, it led to the mess that we were in. And then my mom married again, and then the second time, I think that part of me thinks I wish they had worked it out, but the other part, like, I get why they divorced too. Like, I can see I could see good and bad in both options. Again, I trust that they did the best that they could with the circumstance they were in, but here are still the effects, And I think that as long as we really honestly don't go into divorce naively and believing that it's just going to solve all your problems. Like really, truly, honestly take a look at how it's going to affect.
Grass is greener syndrome.
Yeah.
Because it will affect your kids. And so you do have to decide, okay, what is going to damage my kids more? You know what I mean? Like the divorce itself or not getting divorced and then whatever is inside, whether it's the good of like working it out or the bad of not working it out and having this miserable marriage in front of your kids. Like you're going to have to really look at both. But it's going to affect your kids. And so make the wisest decision that you can for them.
It is so hard. Like, I had no idea. I have no one in my family, no friends, no one that had ever been divorced. I did not know one person that I could call and say, how does this go?
Yeah.
I was the first. And I had no idea. All I knew is what I could do next. Honestly,
Yeah, let's talk about that. How did you rebuild yourself, Marcella? Because you didn't choose the divorce. You wanted to stay.
Yeah, you tried to work it out. He just didn't want to participate.
So how did you start the rebuilding process? I feel like that's one thing that we can't offer our followers as far as advice from you.
Oh,
like
wow.
If the women out there have had divorces.
Or going through one right now.
Yeah. How do you What
to
building
give you
blocks
some
do you need to
context,
rebuild?
that I didn't just like grab a book and be like, let's go. To give you some context, at the time we lived in Wyoming, and my parents, and I'm from Utah, so all his family was there and all my family was here in Utah. And so that's a 7-hour drive. Our agreement was that he would have the kids in the summer and I would have them during the school year. So when it all came down to it, it was May and I was moving out. So I left my 3 and 5-year-olds that I had been stay-at-home mom their whole life. I moved out and lived in my parents' basement and didn't have my children.
7 hours away.
7 hours away. I couldn't like pop in for the weekends even, you know? And so I found myself in a basement of my parents' house at 30 years old with nothing. I had no job. I had no money. I didn't even have a credit card in my name. I had no sippy cups. There were no snacks to get. There was no floors to clean. There were nothing.
Your whole identity that you had built around.
Everything that I built, I was a wife, I was a mother, I was a homemaker, I was all these things. This is how I start my book. I was nothing. I had nothing. I had no identity at all. And it was rough. I mean, there was just a lot of crying in the shower, you know? There was a lot of just kind of like, what do I do? Like weird things that I did. I went to Target and I bought the bedspread that I wanted. Like that was literally, that sounds so stupid. I didn't have to check with anybody. I could get the one I wanted. My mom bought it for me. You know, I got some magazines that I liked. I would sit on my bed like I used to in high school or college and read magazines, like weird stuff that like I honestly just didn't know what to do with myself. I thought, well, what did I do before I had kids? Like I ran a lot. I would work out in my bedroom. I'd just listen to music really loud and like write weird stuff. I'd call my grandma. I'd go visit neighbors. Weird stuff. Like honestly, I mean, it sounds so silly, but like
I don't think it sounds silly at all.
I had this cute pillow. I remember buying this pink pillow to put on my tiny little twin mattress bed. And I remember just being like, that's my bed. I exist right here. And, you know, it's funny because you do have to be very careful. I think you have to make the best decision that you can, like next right thing.
Yep.
Because I think there are a lot of people in a situation that they do need to leave. And the fear of what will happen to my children, they take that as a responsibility and an excuse to stay.
Oh, I've had so many friends be like, if I didn't have kids, I would leave him.
And you cannot worry about that.
Yeah.
And my experience has been that, during those first few years, it was heart-wrenching. I was out of the marriage that was miserable for me. I got to have a Christmas without my husband that made me feel crappy. It was great. My kids missed their mom when they were with their dad, and they missed their dad when they were with their mom, and there was no consoling them.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember like just holding my children with them screaming and crying for their other parent and not being enough for them. I could not be their whole world.
Yeah.
I remember the passing back and forth a million different times and them just having to pack up their bags. Still, my kids are grown teenagers and they still have to pack up a bag to go to their dad's on the weekend, still to this day.
Yep.
And it still is like, that sucks for you.
Yeah.
You still don't get to have your mom and dad on Christmas. You still don't get to have your mom and dad on all these things.
Yeah.
You know, and there's some parents that figure that out, but that sucks for them.
Yeah.
It still sucks for them. It will suck for them the rest of their life is one thing that I've like, oh my gosh, like who's going to be there for the grandkids' birthdays? Is he going to be there? Do we have to share grandkids? Like it doesn't stop. But this is what I will say, that as horrible as those first years were, my children have thrived in their life in ways that they would have never existed. My son has had this incredible acting career. That would have not ever happened. My daughter has incredible figure skating competition talent that we would have never found. The ability to support them both financially would have never existed. The ability to just like transport them. There's 3 parents now. I'm remarried and there's 3 parents that can transport my children. That would have never existed.
Yep.
They have more love in their life. They have millions of grandparents. They have all these cousins from all these different areas. And their dad now lives literally like a quarter of a mile from my home. Like we live in the same neighborhood. And they are good.
Yep.
And so it took a long time to get there. And I think that's the thing. You have to just know, like, you have to love yourself enough to do the next right thing and to trust that the world will work itself out. Like, here you sit, right? Like, I love these stories. Like, there is trauma and there was horrible stuff, but here you are.
And, you know, it's, yes, I agree with you 100%. And I've learned a lot from those experiences, and it's shaped my perception of what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do and so forth. And that's what I work with my son. Like, so my oldest son, who, you know, I had with my ex-boyfriend, who would live, you know, with each other 6 years and the whole bit. And now my son, to this day, yeah, he has to go back and forth. And now I've moved to Utah, which has totally complicated the situation. But what I try to do when I talk with him, and I don't dismiss that what he's going through is not difficult, you know. But having him like learn from this, like, this is what happened was because, you know, your dad and I, you know, we didn't talk about serious things about how we wanted to live our lives. You know, we didn't have like these hard conversations about faith or about this or about that. And so when those changes happened, we weren't able to navigate that. So like, this is why it's important, son, that when you meet a girl and you fall in love with her, like, I'm going to highly stress, make sure that you and your spouse have the same faith because if you don't, it could cause problems later on. That's what I've learned in my life. Like, it's ideal to find someone who has that same faith as you, so that you guys can, because you're gonna have trouble. It's gonna be complicated if you don't. And some people work it out and they're able to make it. Some people don't. In my situation, my ex did not want to be around anything of my faith at all, and it had become such an important part of my life that I couldn't separate it. I couldn't not go to church on Sunday because he didn't want to have a woman in his life who did crack on Sundays, which is what he thought church was like, you know. So just learning from my mistakes, you know, and so that he can make better choices and empower him. But I think that if there is always shelteredness and they never experience any struggles, like, they're not going to learn as well too. So I love what you're saying, and I think that we can protect them, and I think there's a good reason to do so. But you can also use the trials that are going on in your life to talk to your kids and coach them through how to navigate that, because they're going to have problems when they get older too. And how do you deal with those circumstances? And how can you turn lemons into lemonade, and, you know, that kind of outlook on life?
And who are we to take away these experiences? How do I explain this? There are 1 million books and 1 million movies of people that have overcome. Like, that is what builds them, is the hard, crappy stuff, is where you find your strengths, you find your story, you become this thing.
You can't outrun hard.
Yeah. And who are we to say that, you know, my children, they are strong. And this is part of their journey. And I'm not going to save them from all the hard things in life. And now it's interesting because they've experienced more than I ever did at this age. And as sad and heartbreaking as it was to watch them go through it, like, I'm so incredibly proud of them and so amazed by what they still go through. And I know that they'll be able to use those experiences for good, and it will create their journey. And I'm just glad to be able to watch their journey, and I don't take responsibility for it anymore. Like, they get to choose whether they are a victim or not. And I live a life not being a victim so that they know what that looks like.
Yeah.
But they still get to choose. And some days they're victims and some days they're not, you know? But I think going back to like episode that we did before, like, you have to love yourself enough to know what's right for you.
Yeah.
That's what I think just divorce in general, like, there's not a single reason to get a divorce, and there's not a single reason to stay.
Yeah.
It's, some people divorce is thrust on and they don't get to choose, and some people choose divorce. And it's it's hard both ways. Marriage is hard, divorce is hard. Choose your hard. And then accept the consequences of both. And then also, like, we just need to be there for each other and know that, you know, I have a friend right now that's going through a terrible divorce, and her husband's a complete asshole. Like, and I'm just there for her. And she's like, should I get a divorce? Should I not get a divorce? And I'm like, I can't tell you
I
that.
can't make you that decision.
No, and I'm not going to judge you whatever
and I'm going to love
decide.
you either way. Like, if you say that you're going to get a divorce today, and then next week you say, you know what, we're going to work it out, and you can give me all the dirt, and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to still love you regardless.
It's such an individual thing that you will know when a divorce is right. You will know what your walking away point is, and that requires you to know yourself.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like, in all these topics, you have to know yourself. You have to know that you're worth, like, getting to know, and you have to come to a place where you would treat yourself like you would any friend. There were days where I was like, I'm staying. There's days where I was going. And I had to learn a grace to allow myself to not beat myself up on the days where you're like, what the crap? You just said you were going to go yesterday, and now you're going to stay? Like, I was like the friend to myself where it's like, that's okay. You can stay today, or you can go tomorrow. Like,
you can change your mind.
We're figuring this out, you know?
Yeah.
And I think you've got to give yourself that love, and you've got to, and trust that you'll just know. Like, I knew that my marriage was over, but I didn't feel like I needed to leave yet, which is weird. But I was like, hey, I'm here till I'm supposed to go. And then I thought it would be like months or years even. And less than a week later, there was a moment. I literally called my sister-in-law. I said, you need to come be with my kids. And I drove and filled out paperwork and left a note on the table, and we drove away. It just was like, there it was. I just knew. I didn't even question it. I didn't even like work through like, should I do it? Should I not? I just was doing it. And I think we forget that we can trust ourselves to do the right thing. We don't have to actually figure a lot of stuff out. Like, we spend a lot of time and thoughts trying to figure things out. But if you let all those thoughts go, you'd actually have the answer.
Well, I just want to say to any of our followers who are going through a divorce right now, like, I honestly have zero experience with it. Like, I've just sat here and kind of taken everything in and just known that I don't have much room for an opinion because I haven't experienced it on any level. But just know that if you're watching and you're going through a divorce, like, my heart is still with you because it's hard. Like, I can't empathize with you, but I can sympathize. And just know that, like, if I were with you, I would put my arm around you and say, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Like, and marriage is hard. Staying in a marriage is hard, and choosing to fight is hard. And so all of the things, I think.
100%. I think that earlier on, and like, you know how we were talking, I think in a previous episode about like, oh, before I had kids, it was easy for me to turn my nose up and be like, I would never raise my kids this way or that way. I think I I think I had a lot of like those types of naive judgments about marriage and divorce too. But, you know, after going through, 12 years of marriage, the good, the bad, the ugly, seeing friends who have gone through marriage and divorce, knowing their stories, knowing all of it, like I'm hearing so much and seeing just being with my loved ones as they've gone through some of this. I mean, close family members and close friends. Like, I have definitely become more, just less judgmental and more gracious in understanding like why these things happen, and even in situations maybe I wouldn't have a divorce in that situation, respecting that person and their decision, and just knowing like we don't know all of the details, and there's a lot of stuff that they may not have even told you, and they might be sharing stuff or not sharing stuff out of respect for the other person. You can't go in and take a look at these marriages and kind of decide like what should have been done or shouldn't have been done. There's a lot that we just don't know. And so we just got to love each other, I think, through it, and respect each other through it.
I would love if our followers could leave comments and tell us, things that we might have missed. Talking about divorce, how divorce was for you. What was your experience with it? Was it a hard decision? Did you just know? What's your walking away point? Do you have a walking away point? Like, let's get the conversation going in the comments. And
would love to hear from you guys.
I would love to learn too. So teach me more, educate me more about it, and let me see more of the window into it.
Yep.
So, well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Brave Talk Show. If you're watching us on YouTube, there are more episodes you will love on that window to the right, and we will see you on the other side.
Bye.
Bye.
I have some questions for you. Hey, brave girl.